and like I really liked breastfeeding, and I really kind of was like, I want to be able to help people do this. Like this doesn't have to be so hard. Everyone just tells you, oh, it's natural, like you can just do it. And it's like, well, yeah, it's natural, but it's also a learned skill. And we don't watch people like feeding all the time like we used to. We're not in those big family units.
Hi everyone, welcome back to No Place Like Home. I am Larissa and I'm here with Jess, and we are back with the beautiful Mariya, continuing on your story, not our story, very much your story. So we landed with your amazing, eventful pregnancy and birth. Postpartum for that, how long were you in hospital for after that?
I think I stayed 2 nights.
Right.
Like I just stayed for the 2. Like I was considering going home after the 1. And then I was like, oh, I may as well just stay. It's a lot to have to go home. Don't know. Yeah, I stayed. I wish I didn't, but with COVID, Joel could only come in for 2 hours. It like 4 till 6 or 6 till 8 or something in the afternoon. So like that whole time I've got a baby who's feeding a lot. He was great in the hospital. He was so well behaved. That's a nice way to put it. Like he slept, whatnot. But like, you know, you're feeding and then they want to be on you and it's loud and then they come and wake you up to check you. And because I hadn't done the one of the tests before my birth, they wanted to check on baby more regularly.
Right.
And so they were waking us up
It's
regularly.
Disrupted.
And I was like, I cannot get any sleep. Then Joel comes in and I want him to spend time with baby.
Yeah.
But I also need him.
Yeah.
And he wants to call family and tell family. And it's like, oh God, this is not how I pictured it, you know. I always said, because I wanted to protect myself, I guess, in a way, and I was like, we're not having any visitors in hospital. This was before COVID because I didn't want the pressure of, oh, I did it this way, here, try this. I was like, I want to figure this out on my own.
How far into COVID was it when you birthed?
August. And so we were in the longest Melbourne lockdown that we had.
Yeah,
at that point. Yeah.
Because I know a few people that birthed through COVID, and I think no one will ever understand that unless you birthed and were in the hospital at that time, be it a mother who's birthed or not. I think that is such a unique time that unless you were there, you just have no idea of how horrible it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it was not ideal. And then you go home and people came and visited, like as in the midwives come and check on you and all those kind of things. And you go to your maternal child health appointments, which, you know, bless them.
Such a diplomatic plan. There are some
trying to do their best, and there are some very good ones.
And there are some incredible maternal health nurses.
Right. Yeah. But like, no, then no one could come and visit. Like I had planned for food, like we had all the freezer space we had was full of prepared food.
Beautiful.
Because I knew no one could come as well, you know.
Yeah.
And so I cooked all this food and we were good for food, but then no one could come, which was kind of sad, but also good in the way that I'd kind of figured out how I wanted to do things before we did see people. But also like they never got to hold little baby tiny Bubba, you know, like, and, you know, anyway, there was good things, bad things. But I found it probably a lot more challenging, the sleep deprivation. Okay. Like I thought, like Joel and I both were kind of like, oh, we do night shifts, we do shift work, like we're fine. But every day felt post-night shift. And I thought, how do people do this when they haven't done shift work before? Like this must be torture for those people.
We drink coffee, not like you.
I mean, Joel still drank coffee and it didn't help him that much. But, you know, and we'd end up taking shifts of like, we'd literally have baby sleep on us for half the night and then we'd swap over. And luckily it was basketball playoffs at the time, so Joel got to watch the basketball. So he was like, cool, I'll happily wake up at 4 a.m. and watch it. But that was really tricky until sort of 6 weeks, because I just felt like there's a better way to do this. Like you'd put him in the bassinet and it's just, he'd wake up. Like it just wasn't no good. Anyway, I went down to my family at 6 weeks postpartum to have some help while Joel was back at work. And I just started co-sleeping there. And so when I then came home to Joel, I had to have a really big like, I want to do this. This feels really natural to me. I'm getting so much more sleep.
I was going to say, did you notice the benefits?
Oh, so much more sleep.
But as a paramedic, he would be like,
yeah. And even I was like that to start with, right?
Yeah.
And so he was really respectful. After we sort of chatted about it, I said it feels really natural to me, X, Y, and Z. Like I laid it all out to him and he was like, cool, that's fine, but I don't want to be in the bed.
And you had done all the research on how to properly co-sleep and
like, and I'd learned a lot about it through COVID and on Instagram and stuff like that. Like that came up to a lot. And so we dismantled the bed. I put my mattress on the floor and Joel got kicked out to the spare bed, which he was doing a lot anyway, because I was like, you need your sleep to be able to look after people in your job. Like you can't be running off no sleep. Like you can't be driving code 1 through traffic
on no
and
sleep.
fall asleep or, you know, like it's just not okay. So he would sleep in the other room. I'd have baby. And most of the time it was pretty good. We'd have 1 or 2 wakes, you know, I'd change napping, go back to sleep because feeding, and I had nothing else to do the next day. So I just go back to bed the whole day with him, you know, like there was a lot of forced rest, which was great. But then I didn't by 6 months we'd sold our house and moved closer to family because we just couldn't do it. We could do it, but it wasn't ideal.
Yeah, okay.
And I just was like, cool, I want family around.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want our kids to have some family to be close by. And, you know, my mother-in-law lived like 30 minutes drive. And that's a lot for her to then come to have a baby, like look after the baby and go home. Like she isn't that kind of person. So living close to her, we have a lot more support from her that way.
And how postpartum were you when you and Joel made this decision?
Like 3 months,
I
reckon. So we had August we were signing papers that we'd sold our house on Christmas Eve.
Right.
So mid-August and we're ready.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were just like, no, we've got to Yeah. So that was big, trying to move baby and no sleep. But yeah, I just slept a lot. That was kind of my postpartum, which I think I look back now and I'm like, I probably had postpartum depression somewhere in that. But I didn't even think about it because I'd get up, I'd feed baby, maybe I'd eat, I'd sleep with him, get up. Like it was the only way I'd get sleep. Repeat. Like I didn't have to be anywhere. So
how did your postpartum go from there? And then when did you have other children after your first?
Yeah. So from there it was pretty, I guess I say straightforward, but like
Did you get your dream of going back to work part-time?
Well, I tried. Like breastfeeding, I had a lot of trouble. Well, not a lot of troubles there, but oversupply, still feeding him 20,000 times a day, all night. Got to 1, he got a spot in childcare and I went, okay, well, looks like I'm going back to work because we don't want to say no to the spot in childcare because it might not come up for who knows how long again. So he goes and has his first orientation of childcare. A couple of days later, we go to my pop's funeral and he has like a febrile convulsion at my pop's funeral and ends up in and out of hospital for a while. And I'm trying to do all these return to work shifts and thinking, oh, God, this is really stressful. This is really hard. And someone goes to me, like, why are you coming back to work? Like, why are you here? And I was like, because I said I was coming back. So I'm coming back. And she was like, take more time. Like, you can take more time. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
So I took some more time because then my grandma was really sick at the same time. And so I was going to help with palliative care for her at home and all these things, but also then COVID made that a bit hard too. So And then I organised to go back to work and I was like, cool, Joel's had leave. We've been away. I'll go back after that point. And then I did a couple of days of my like returning to work stuff. And then the day before I actually went back starting on road part-time, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And like we'd been like, it was 18 months postpartum. I hadn't had the return of a cycle properly yet. Like I was starting to get this point of like, well, I'm just going to have to go back to work. Like I'm not going to get pregnant. And I wasn't going to stop breastfeeding to be able to facilitate like that. Like I made that choice. So that was like an interesting, and then I went to go back to work. So then I did office duties again because I was pregnant and COVID was still around sort of. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not going back on road.
And then what was your mentality going into that next birth and then postpartum? Like was it vastly different from the first time or
and did you know, but had you decided between first birth and second pregnancy that you wanted to have a home birth next time, or was it while you were pregnant that you were like?
I'd kind of got to the point of like I kind of knew that I wanted to have a home birth, but Joel was still a bit like, and because I was induced, I was like, I don't know how my body would do it, like what that would actually look like. And then I got pregnant and I was like, I don't know if I can justify the money. Like that's just, it's a lot of money to do, you know? So I was like, and I just waited to go through the public system, and I got a text message reminding me the day before my first appointment, which I'd never heard about, at like 19 weeks. And I was like, oh, okay, apparently I have a telehealth appointment tomorrow. So I had to call them to find out what time because it didn't even tell me the time. And then I went on this telehealth appointment with this midwife who, like, there was not even a question of, oh, how are you going? How have you felt throughout your pregnancy? There was nothing. And she basically was like, cool, tell me about this, how's this going, tell me about that. And I was like, oh, cool, like I'm sort of considering a home birth, I'm just not sure yet. And I don't know, her comments were quite rude. And after that appointment, I said to Joel, there is no way I'm going through the system again. I just cannot do that. And he'd already been saying to me, like, if this is something you really want, we'll work it out. Okay. And I was still in that point of like, no, like I can't do that. Like I can't put myself first in that way. Like anyway, I did it and I got a photographer and everything too. And did the whole shebang.
It well. Yeah.
Okay. And pregnancy pretty straightforward. Really, like I was still in the back of my mind. There's always that until that baby's in my arms, like there's no guarantee I'm having a baby. And when I found out the potential due date, which was the day after my husband's birthday, I said to him, you know, it's coming on your birthday.
Oh my God!
Like,
did it?
No, sorry, it was the day before his birthday. We were due. So his birthday is the 16th, I was due on the 15th. And I was like, you know, it's going to come. And it did come on his birthday. He was furious. He was like, you can't, like,
take that away from me.
Give me another hour.
It's my birthday, right? And so we're having his birthday dinner. And, like, I started having some on and off things. Like, he had a stomach bug on the weekend. And then I had a few days later, I was like, you know, body was clearing out. But I didn't know whether it was pregnancy related or a stomach bug. And my midwife's like, oh, it's probably just a stomach bug. Like, you know. Then the next day, on his birthday, I woke up with these like pains and I was like, oh, okay, these feel a bit like my contractions when I was induced. That's a bit odd. Everyone said it would feel different this time. It's like, okay. So then I waited a while and I sent my midwife a message and I was like, look, I'm just not sure. She's like, I'll take a Panadol and have a rest. And I was like, cool. Took a Panadol, had a rest. That seems pretty good. But I wasn't feeling great. And so we're going to go out for lunch for Joel's birthday. And I was like, I'm going to sit this one out because like I need the rest after I've been, you know, not able to stomach anything and then I'm going to have to give birth at some point. So you go do that with your friend. And then he's like, you sure, can I go? And I was like, oh yeah, like it's fine. There's not much going on. And then he's like, you sure? And I was like, yeah, go. Anyway, I sat there watching some TV and I have to get up every time I'd have a contraction. But I was just like, oh, this is a bit weird. Cool, I'll stand up. You know, this feels a bit better. I sit down. The afternoon came round and I was like walking up and down the driveway with my son on his bike with my sister before we're having dinner for Joel's birthday. And I have to like walk away. So I was like, oh, this is a bit, okay. And I was so like, no, like I was like, I'm not in labour, you know, whatever, nothing's going on. Then I went to sit down for dinner and I couldn't eat. I was like, had like a bite of a spring roll and I was like, but I was able to eat this morning. Why can I not eat again? Anyway, whatever. And then I started having to retreat. And like I didn't even think about it at the time, but like I would go up the stairs to our ensuite when I felt a contraction coming on. Once I finished, I'd come back down and I'd sit there with everyone having their dinner and I'd retreat again.
Had you sorted the house to accommodate your home birth at that time or?
Yeah. I mean, things were in the garage, but it was just getting set up in the play area.
Wow.
Like we have dogs, cats. I don't want them to be clawed by the...
Yeah.
So like there was instructions written out for Joel, like you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, well, I kept retreating up and down. And then I got some pastries because I called my brother making a cake for his birthday, put some candles on that. And then our little one decides it's the perfect time for a big meltdown. So Joel's trying to put him to bed. I'm sitting in the bathroom like dying. His mum goes to me at dinner like, are you in labour? And I was like, nah. Or she goes, oh, you're having this baby? I was like, no, I'm good. And so she leaves. Like she left. Joel's gone to my sister like, she's in labour. Like, can you stay? And so she set up the whole pool while Joel's trying to get our son to sleep and I'm in the bathroom like going, oh, I'm still not in labour. This is tough, but you know.
It's not real labour. It's just Braxton Hicks.
I think it's going to die down. It died down last time. And then he comes out at like 8:30 and he's like, I'm calling the midwives. And I was like, no, that's okay. And so he calls my midwife and she's like, oh, can you put her on the phone? And then I go to have a contraction. She's like, okay, I'm coming. She's like, are you having I was like, I couldn't really talk. She's like, you just go through that. And then she's like, I'm on my way. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, that's fine. And then I was starting to think, maybe the pool's not going to get set up before I have this baby, even though I didn't think I was really super. And then they got there probably 2.5 hours and then baby was out.
Did the birth happen how you hoped it would?
Well, I didn't really have any hopes. I was just like, well,
did you make it into the pool?
I made it into the pool.
Okay, great.
But like I came downstairs. They were like, oh, I think you should go downstairs now. I'm like, oh no, I'll just wait a bit longer. Like, no, go downstairs. Because Joel's biggest fear was that I would give birth upstairs and then need to be evacuated somehow. And
have to get down the stairs.
And that's paramedic brain. Like that's like you have to go to, anything happens and we have to get you down the stairs. Too hard. So I'm downstairs in a while and they're like, oh, you should get in the pool now. And I was like, no, I might go wee first. And they're like, I think you should just get in the pool, get in there and wee in there if you need to. And I was like, oh, okay. And then Joel asked what the time was. And she's like, looked at the clock and she goes, oh, it'll be this side of midnight, mate. Because they thought he was like asking you. And when I looked at the time and it was like 10 to 11 or something, I was like, oh, thank God it's going to be within like the next hour. Like I just, like I was starting to get that point of like, I don't think I can keep doing this. Next minute my waters break. And I was like, oh, this feels so much better. And they were clear as all clear. There was nothing.
Oh, good.
And I was like, oh, this is okay. Had baby, all fine, everything clear. And it was 2 minutes past 11 on his birthday. And he's still just not happy that he has to share his birthday. So
love that.
But he got his little princess that he wanted. So
At
home, all good. Placenta took a while, but I think it was more stuck. Like it had detached. Like 10 minutes after or something, I was like, oh, it feels like it's coming out. I stood up in the pool, but it didn't come out. And as paramedics, we're told don't touch the cord. So I was like, I just want to get it. Like it feels like it's going to come out, but it didn't come out. So I just left it. And so it's probably like another hour and a bit before it actually, one of the midwives just gave it like a little, and it just came out.
Okay.
Which was good, but yeah.
Okay, so then talk to us a bit about, obviously you're a doula now. So talk to us a bit about, so did you do your training for that after your second birth?
After
second
my
child?
first birth, I was kind of like, oh, I like this stuff. And like I really liked breastfeeding. And I really kind of was like, I want to be able to help people do this. Like this doesn't have to be so hard. Everyone just tells you, oh, it's natural. Like you can just do it. And it's like, well, yeah, it's natural, but it's also a learned skill. And we don't watch people like feeding all the time like we used to. We're not in those big family units. So I looked at like lactation consultant. I looked at postpartum doula stuff. And I was talking to one of my friends who had just had her first little bub, and she's also a paramedic, good friend of mine who I now have my business with. And I was like, I was thinking, like, I've been thinking about this. She's like, you know what? I've been thinking about that too. She actually didn't have a baby at that stage actually, and she wasn't pregnant.
Right.
And she's like, you know what? I've thought about it too. And I was like, oh wow, she hasn't even had a baby You're thinking about it. That's interesting.
See, she's special.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so cool. Anyway, so we both did it. I did it through my pregnancy, my third pregnancy.
Yeah.
And then my recovery in that postpartum, like from having that home birth, was just so incredible. And my daughter slept so amazingly that at like 2 months postpartum, Karen and I started working on the business, and
which is called
Village Blossom.
Blossom?
Yeah. And so I was like, cool, this is great. And I was getting so much done because like I'd feed Ivy, I'd pop her on the floor, she'd put herself off to sleep. She'd give me a grizzle, I'd feed her, she'd have a play, by herself, she was happy. She'd just fall asleep when she wanted to go to sleep. And I was like, wow, these things happen. People aren't lying when they say babies can sleep.
And this is, and for such a contrast experience, it would have felt that much. But I just feel like I can assimilate because Sebastian was so different second time. And I was like, oh, this is what it can feel like.
Yeah, I was still so triggered every time she woke me in the night.
Yeah.
Because I fed my first for a very long time throughout the night. And so I was still really triggered, even though I knew like she needs this, she's a newborn. It was really triggering, which I found really interesting looking back on.
Yeah.
You were tandem feeding too, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I was tandem feeding the two of them. Yeah. Yeah. So that was a lot. But it was something I really wanted to do actually before I'd even had, and so that's why I had so much, not pressure on myself, but I really wanted to get pregnant again.
So you
because I wanted to tandem feed. And
I always loved the idea of it, but
and I was like, but now I'm not going to get to tandem feed. Like it sounds a bit like it's a bit silly, really. I'm like, look at it now, I'm like, that's silly, but like it was just so special to be able to do that.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about Village Blossom and what you and Kieran provide.
Yeah. So we are doing virtual postpartum doula supports, like planning for your birth, planning for your postpartum, that side of things. We sort of felt like at the time when we created the business, we were looking at doing in-home support, and we thought we can't justify it yet because we want to be able to give enough to our family and to the families we work with. And at the time we had to make that call of, actually, I don't think we can do that yet.
Was COVID still happening or was this after?
After.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like COVID was still around.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
But those
so big.
The intensity of COVID.
Yeah. And so we were sort of doing some online stuff, and then we both separately seen the Instagram post about the Art of Birth Debriefing mentorship with Lael and B, and both of us, when we sent it to each other, had said, oh, we showed our husbands this, and they both said, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And we were just like, and we just seen it, and we just felt like we just had to do it.
Connection.
Which is so interesting. Like now that I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, wow, it was meant to be. Like,
so Karen had a baby by this stage though, didn't she?
She had a baby, yeah. And she'd had a baby, and then we'd started the business after that. And then so we went and did this mentorship, not knowing really what we were getting ourselves signed up for, because they purposely didn't really put any information out about it, right?
Yeah.
We had no idea. And I was like so nervous going to this thing anyway. And I'm not someone who'd ever really done meditation or anything. And so we're doing these things, and I'm starting to feel all these things in my body. And I was like, I need to run. Like, I need to leave this place. What the hell is going on? But I stayed, and it was such a life-changing experience for me. And like, I feel like a completely different person. Just prior to that, I had fallen into postpartum depression quite badly, and I had gone onto some medication for that. And I think it was just a perfect storm of everything at the time that just gave me the space and the capacity to actually evaluate my life and see my life for what it was, and go, oh, okay. It wasn't strange that I felt X, Y, and Z, or that I didn't feel good enough for X, Y, and Z because of these things, and that's why I parent this way, or why I don't want to parent that way, or why I react like this when someone says something in a particular way. And
Lael certainly has a beautiful way of evoking those things within people that become, I think, our greatest life lessons.
And so now I'm just like, wow, so much compassion and love to everyone and their stories. And like all our parents and
yeah,
you know, I look back at myself and go, oh my God, I can't believe that I did X, Y, and Z as a paramedic. Like for X, Y, and Z people, like I feel like I could have handled that so much better. And like I understand I did the best I could at the time.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it just changed my whole perspective because I guess, especially in the system, we get very judgmental almost on people and put people in boxes. Yeah. And we don't actually look beyond the behavior. Yeah. And now I'm like, wow.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel like, you know, you and I have discussed this off the podcast, how you doing that mentorship really opened your mind to the art of exploring every person and everyone's story with curiosity rather than judgment. Yeah. And that's something that I come back to time and time again, curiosity over judgment always, because there's always a reason behind something. There's always a story behind someone. And I love that. Yeah. You're here now. And you've just got so much to offer. It's so beautiful. And clearly you want to help people, right? Because like it started with paramedic work and now it's doula work and birth debriefing, and you're just such a good person. We're so lucky to have you in the world and working with us at home.
It's an honour to be working here. It's lovely. I feel very blessed to be part of this team.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And if anybody didn't hear your first episode, go back and listen to that because it's scintillating, the right word.
It's eventful.
And if you have any questions for Mariya about her work, her story, Village Blossom, if you want to book in a birth debrief, you can. We'll link Mariya in our notes, and you can also contact her via us if you need to. We can pass messages on. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mariya.
Thanks for having me, ladies.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.